our next presenter is Gabriel Fransisco. Now, I'll just add something here, in that when I was promoting the internships to the Curtin staff community yesterday, one of our staff around the university said the one that jumped out to him was Gabriel's, because the title might sort of give that to you. So virtual reality-based treatments for the fear of spiders with or without control. Jumping in, yeah, okay, right. So Gabriel is doing a double degree in mechatronics and computer science. He's working under the supervision of Daniel Rudaizky, which is just over there. And we thank all of our supervisors for their support of the students and the projects throughout the internship period. Gabriel's scholarship is funded by the HIVE and also the Faculty of Health Sciences. So,
hi, my name is Gabriel, and as Andrew introduced, I'm doing the virtual reality-based treatments for the fear spiders with or without control. There we go. Oh no, that was supposed to be a surprise. Oh well. So spider fear is one of the most common human fears which interferes with daily life, such as, oh, there's a spider in the room, I'm not going to sleep in that room anymore, or I might leave the house and move away somewhere else. And yeah, good thing this is easily mediated through exposure therapy, where they expose you to the fear stimulus. That's not a exposure therapy session, although that is how they would conduct it, where they would place the fear stimulus and then they would base it on how you approach it, which is called the behavioral approach test, where it's like, oh, are you far away from the spider? Are you touching it? Or are you grabbing onto it? But before that, you'll be pre-tested, like, oh, what's your fear in spiders like? And then during that behavioral approach test, they will check on as well as like how anxious are you feeling using the subjective units of discomfort scale, which is a tool that measures how are you feeling, what your internal feelings as well, and the post-test as well, checking up on how you're feeling overall. Previous studies have done virtual reality exposure therapy, which is just the exposure therapy itself, but within the VR headset, or in this case, one of the studies actually uses stereoscopic image, which like over there in the wedge, where you have like a 3D sort of image when you wear 3D glasses. Then someone else also actually used the VR headset to create a VR environment with different kind of settings and different kind of spiders, as you can see over here, a tarantula, a black widow, and someone tropical looking like. And with that study for different environments and different spiders, it is proven to be more effective than with just normal spiders, normal house spiders, or like in a safer environment. That is less effective, but it's more effective with a scary spider and a scary environment. The stereoscopic image was able to produce that presence and immersion as well. So my objectives with this project is create that same VR environment and possibly recreate that kind of reaction from the pages as well, and allow different kind of experimentation, like maybe size, distance away from the spider, or how the spider moves. As well as be able to toggle between therapist and player control, where the therapist would be able to just put in some values for the player to just experience and get exposed on, or the player would control themselves on what their exposures will be like. So the method would be summarized like this. So first off, I will create the environment of where the patients will be in the VR environment, then create the size that will change how the spider behaves, as well as creating a tablet UI and the UI that changes over time with that, as well as the start science files, which the therapist will change and create, where they can change a few values or like set it to read mode, and then doubled up, all right. And then with incorporate VR, which is incorporating that VR setting. As those previous things before, I'll create them without VR, and then implement the VR afterwards. And then the output data files, which will output software data from the Unity software. Also, all of this has been created using the Unity game engine, and it's also tested on the Meta Quest 2 headsets. So first off, this is the environment. So that's the 3x3 room where the patients will be staying in, or spawn in. And then there will be the doors where we're open and close, which will show the spider exposure over there in the corridor, which is 2.4 meters wide, 2 meters in width, and 12 meters in length. So these are different sliders that I've created. So once for distance, once for the size, and once for the speed. As you can see, as for the distance slider on the very left, it will go closer towards the door, and then farther with high values. And then with the size slider, it will make it smaller, big. And then with the speed as well, we'll make it very slow, or like very fast, which is quite scary. On the left, there'll be a placement spider, which as I've heard from many people around during this internship, they really don't like spiders on the roof or the wall. So I added that in, where it's like place them on the wall or on the roof, and just leave them on the floor. Now, as you can see over there as well, I have other labels there saying range of motion. So on the left, the range of motion is like a ping pong action, where it's going from the borders from the left and then to the right and then going back and forth. And then for the right image, that is going in a square-like pattern. So this is more a graphic showing how it moves. So with zero range of motion, it would go left, right, starting going to the right first from the starting position. As you can see, those red points. And then with one range of motion on the slider, it would go first towards that top left corner and then go towards the clockwise motion of a square. Now I'm looking into randomness, which you probably could not tell from the first one since it's close to the border, but at some points it is slightly farther from the border than it should be. It's still having that ping pong action with that range of motion at 0. Now with randomness of 4, it just goes around that line of that ping pong action. It's still ping ponging, but it's not going at the borders, it's going at the middle. Well, it's going at the left side as well, which as you can see here. So those red lines are just possible points where it would go onto. So it would be a ping pong action, but it could be anywhere along those points. Now this is with a range of motion of 1 and then different randomness. So with 1 randomness, with that 1, and so previously I showed as well at 0.25. That's from because the max value of randomness is 4. So it would be just 25% of it, or 1/4 of that whole half line. That's why 0.25 meters, since that half that line is 1 meter. So with this one, with the range of motion of 1 on the left side, square movement on the right side. It is quite varied, so it's supposed to be a square like so over here. So that red highlighted line could be anywhere it could go. Like it would go from one point to another, then one point to another around that red highlighted area. For randomness 1 and range of motion 1, it would go from a little bit less of a highlighted area as before, since it is a lower randomness. Also, if you can see as well, that spider is going to one point and then rotating around towards the next point. So as that spider goes to one point, a different point will be assigned, and then that spider will rotate according to go towards that point. Now this is what the tablet UI and changing UI would look like. So this is without the VR environment for now. So on that tablet over there, so you have a tablet that you will rate your anxiety data on throughout. So there's also an after test and a pre-test, during test and an after test. So that's during test, where it will show you the exposure. Then you'll get rated on the clipboard. And then afterwards it will close and it'll rate you again to just check if you're baseline anxiety or not. And then afterwards the experiment is done, then you take off the headset. And as well at the start, you will change around your sliders to your exposure that you'd like to see fit. Here's the start settings that the therapist would use, or maybe possibly the patient if they want to have different kinds of sliders. So there's a read mode on, which basically means that wall UI would be blank, and then they will go through the experiment without it. They won't change anything on their control. But there's also a show settings during read, which would have the sliders, but they still won't control over it. And then just some start values. So at the start of the software, all those values will come out first. And you also have disable those kind of sliders, where if they want to do different kind of experiments, so they want to just do purely on speed or purely on size of the spider, they can disable everything else. As well as the exposure durations. So as you can see from before, the doors would, so the doors will open at one point. Oh, I was working before. Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah. So the doors. So that's how long the exposure would occur. And then in between opening the doors and then closing the doors. As well as how many times you get checked on anxiety. So from the videos just before, you notice that I've been checked on the frequency once, which I've set over there in the start settings, which is anxiety check frequency, but that's during the exposure. And then there's also the duration of the after exposure, like how long you're going to get checked on your baseline, as well as the frequency, how many times you're going to get checked after the exposure, and the amount of exposure as well. But for that one, I've only set it to 1 for the purposes of this presentation. Now this is me incorporating VR, just using the Oculus integration package. As you can see, the controllers over there as well, playing around with the clipboard. It's basically the same previous thing I just showed before, but I can actually move around now, instead of just being static. See me just changing sliders all around and spiders on the roof. Quite big and scary. Oh, it's moving around. Yikes. And this will output after the experiment, after saying experiment has ended, they take up the headset, then turn off the software. These will be outputted. So on the top, that's just data for whenever they want to set up no controls. That's the CSV file they inputted in. So on the very left column, that's the time where the doors will open, and then will automatically close based on the start settings you set before. And those are the values that the previous participant have used, and those are the different kinds of exposures you use throughout. Then on the bottom, that's the write data during that experiment. So on the very left side, you have time steps are 0.01, so you have accurate data. And then with the anxiety data, that's the anxiety data from your clipboard saying 1 to 10 of how anxious you're feeling. And then the exposure occurrence, which is either before the door is open or after the door is closed, before, after, during. And then that's all the spider slider data that you see on the wall in the middle over there between those white gaps. Then after that second white gap is a software data from the Unity software output of where the player position is compared to the origin, as well as the spider position compared to the origin as well, and then their distance from each other on an XZ plane and then an XYZ plane, as well as the orientation of your Oculus headset, as well as the supposed look rotation, so where your headset is, and then compare that to where the spider is, whereas the look rotation is like your headset's supposed to look at to show that you're actually looking at the spider, which is at the very last column, which is the difference between them. So if that difference is the lower the better, that means that you're actually looking at the spider or around near it. Now, sadly, with this kind of VR implementation, you can't actually see your arms as well, and your legs. Oh. Huh, okay, right. So as I've seen before, you can't see your arms, legs, or your body. And usually as well with the tablet, you can face through it and then put it behind your head. And the immersion is broken. But you could consider this as like a culmination of the previous related works as I've mentioned before, which having different sizes, different spiders. And I say more because this has the potential to create research data, different kinds of research data, specifically on the size of the spider or maybe the distance away from the spider. But I have created a exposure therapy session within VR. And as I've just mentioned just then, different types of exposure that you can create, as well as with that read mode and write mode on the CSV settings, you can swap between patient and therapist control. As well, I've noticed as well with the previous studies, they don't actually use the software data, while this one does, where it's like they extract the data from the software, then actually use that, because you can move around within the VR software, and the VR headset would actually give you that data. For future work, I'd like some player and spider interaction where you can hold the spider, like go into it, because the main point of this is that you don't go past to the door, and you can't actually touch the spider. You can go up close to it, you can look at it and like see where it is, but you can't actually touch it or like grab it or kill it. And with the audio, there's no audio cues at the moment. With different spiders would be good, as I've shown previously, with different kind of spiders like tarantulas and black widows, and different settings, like maybe in the beach. I don't know how you see a spider on the beach, and maybe at home, like on the top of your roof, or like maybe in the railroad track, maybe in your classroom, maybe in the bathroom. Quite weird, but. And as well as realistic movements. So as you can see before, the spider was rotating to a point and then moving towards it. That's not exactly how a spider moves. It would rotate as it walks around it. As I've mentioned previously, scenarios, and a spider robot in real life. So I would like, as a future work, there's an actual spider in real life that's also matching with the software. So it moves around in real space as it moves around in VR reality. So it could actually touch your legs and you can actually feel instead of just being it on in real life. But it's just a robot, it's not an actual spider. That would be good as well if it's a real life spider. Ooh. Then I would like to see AR implementation, since you're just in the VR world, but with AR implementation, you're actually on the real world, but then there's actually a virtual spider on your eyes. And an EEG or heart rate data, which most researchers within psychology would use in their actual works. I'd like to implement that as well at the same time, at the same rate of data processing. Well, with this kind of tool, this may be the starting point and starting potential of creating, or maybe eradicating fear all around and making the artificial fearless human. Yes, enjoy that flipping spider. Oh, yeah, all right, cool. I'd like to acknowledge Daniel and then Bernd as well and Peter for helping me create this project as psychology standards should be. And as well as Wesley for helping me like fixing the problems within the software, and the Curtin HIVE for giving me this opportunity and the funding for this project. And the internet, boundless knowledge. And yeah, any questions?